Good afternoon, and welcome to a Curriculum First approach to technology and the web. This is the first in a series of 4 webinars over the next few weeks, which are all part of REL West's ongoing support for California districts as they implement the Common Core state standards. My name is Meg Livingston Asensio. I'm from REL West, and I'll be your webinar facilitator today. My pleasure now to introduce today's presenter, Mike Casey. He's the Director of Technology for the Del Mar Union School District. Mike, thank you very much for being here, and take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, everyone, for participating with us in this webinar about a Curriculum First approach. And just a couple of things to go over before we start. You were sent, hopefully, some questions to kind of think about before we started this webinar. And if you weren't on that list, just kind of, we asked folks to think about was, what is your district's curriculum focus? And that's something you should be able to answer in 10 words or less. Another question or something to think about while we go through the webinar is, what does your district's organizational chart look like? And we're going to talk about that in some detail and talk about why that organizational chart is so important to the success of integrating technology into your curriculum. The third question, what is your district's killer app that supports your curriculum focus? Just something to think about. Do you have an application? Do you have a collection of applications? What is really supporting the instructional practice in the classroom? And the fourth question was, how many or which students have their own device to support their learning? So I know a number of school districts are trying to get to one-to-one. That might mean different things in different school districts, whether it's each child has their own device and they take it with them throughout the day, or they have it with them throughout the day, or is it there's one available whenever they need it throughout the day? And then the last question, we're going to talk a little bit in the webinar about a few technical things, but was for you to think about your wireless environment and what does that look like? And can you today support 30, 40, 50 devices in a single classroom? So we'll talk about that throughout the webinar. The other things we're going to be talking about or going over are, we're going to talk a little bit about strategic planning and mission and vision and why that is so important to the success of implementing technology. And then, like I mentioned before, we're going to talk a little bit about your organizational structure, and then I'll talk about our project that we did here in Del Mar, and then we'll kind of finish up with a little bit on infrastructure and a little bit on wireless technology. And the purpose of that is to give you information so you can have thoughtful conversations with your IT folks about what your needs are. From what I'm seeing of the different folks logging in, a lot of folks are more on the educational technology side, or they're administrators, and so it'd be good to give you some background information on wireless technology so that, again, you can have that really good conversation with your IT department. So we'll go ahead and just jump in here and get started. So one of the key things for me is an organization's ability to articulate their curriculum focus. And I kind of say, what is the elevator version? You should be able to have a real short statement or version of your focus that everyone can understand and that everyone knows throughout your organization. If somebody asked me, what's our curriculum focus? I would say it's writing, writing, and writing, because that's what our belief is, that that's the cornerstone of everything we want children to do, is to be able to write. So one of the things that you can do for me is, there's the polling, the little green checkbox and the red X. Is your site's curriculum focus actionable and clearly articulated? So if you'd weigh in on that, I would appreciate it. Okay, I'm seeing some people logging in and checking the green box. And if you don't have that, that's fine. That's what we're going to talk about here in the next few minutes. Okay, so we've got a number of people that have checked the green box, and some that have not checked any boxes, which is fine. So let me tell you a short story. I was asked by a superintendent in another school district in Northern California to help them with their visioning process in their school district. And so we put together a meeting with all the cabinet members, with 2 of the site principals, with the IT department, and with their curriculum and instructional people. And so the first thing when they want to talk about technology is they really want to talk about the device or gadgets and what we want kids to walk around with. And so I asked them the question. I said, well, before we do that, tell me what your curriculum focus is. And there was probably at least a minute or 2 of just dead silence, and no one in that room could articulate that. And so it was kind of telling to me that they weren't quite ready to even have that conversation yet. So my whole philosophy and our school district's philosophy is that you should be able to articulate what your focus is for your school site or for your district. And then you should be able to also articulate how does that fit in with the district's priorities. So do you have a district strategic plan and your curriculum focus is part of that? Or is it something that you don't have yet, or maybe you don't have a strategic plan? So we'll talk about that throughout the webinar. And then how do you communicate effectively your priorities throughout your organization? So I think it's really important that when you do have a curriculum focus and you do have an alignment with your strategic plan, how do you communicate your priorities? And I think you have to use every possible way that you can. So whether it's on your websites and newsletters, it's on your letterhead, is it part of your email signature, is it on your business cards, your Twitter, your Facebook account? When you send out voice messages, are you adding in the tagline about your school district and what that means to your organization? So those are all things that you want to consider when you're talking about having a curriculum focus. Can you articulate it, and how do you communicate it to all the stakeholders in your organization? So let me talk a little bit about the strategic planning process that we went through in Del Mar. We got together on a number of occasions, Saturdays, after work, and got everyone together, all the stakeholders from the community, from our teachers, our parents, our administrative staff, our classified staff, and we spent a significant amount of time developing what we thought was the top priorities for our school district. And it was a quite involved process, but we actually got it down to these 7 different priorities. So number 1 was curriculum instruction, number 2 was technology, and number 3 was professional development. So those are the top 3. And we have the other 4 areas in finance, communication, facilities, and external relations, but we really had to step back from the finance, communications, facilities, and external relations until we really understood what the first 3 of those meant. So we really had to sit back and say, wow, curriculum instruction, what does that mean? So that really forced us to have a curriculum focus that we could articulate and communicate to everyone, and then the technology that supported that curriculum and instruction, and then of course the professional development around that. So that really drove the other 4 areas. So an example of that is we constantly come back to this strategic planning priorities, and so when we purchase anything, does it fit in with those first 3 priorities? How is it connected to those priorities? For example, we stopped buying consumable workbooks because we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on consumable workbooks, and we needed to spend the money on professional development, technology, and supporting our curriculum focus in writing. So all of our purchases now and everything we do in our organization fits with those top 3 priorities. So it's a good thing to have a strategic plan for your organization, and one that is just not a process you go through and put on the shelf and pull it out every once in a while, we actually use ours on a daily basis to keep us focused and keep us moving forward in the right direction. So again, when we make decisions, we should be able to look at that strategic planning priorities, and we should be able to see those in that process. So now let's talk a little bit about vision and mission and why that is so important. So these are vision and mission are things that organizations develop over a period of time in their planning process, and whether or not you go back to them or not is really whether it's been worth your while or not. So the vision to me is the most important. It really outlines what you want the organization to be. It's a really long-term view, and it really focuses on the future of where we want to go. And where a mission is more of a describing why things exist or what it does to achieve the vision. And you can kind of see a couple of examples there. Our vision in Del Mar is educating innovative global thinkers. And that's paraphrased. If you were to get out our strategic planning document, you'd see a whole paragraph. But we really dug those 4 words out, and that's on our website and on our business cards, and it's everywhere we go, we see those 4 words. So we stay focused on that, and it helps us move forward in our organization. So I put together 6 points of how a vision can support your organization, and I'm going to go through them, not super fast, but it's important to think about this. So having a vision allows your organization to focus, and it keeps people focused on a daily basis. It lets everyone know what you're thinking. It tells people where the organization is going, and it's the overall purpose for what you do. So it's very important to have that vision and to be able to articulate it. The other thing a vision can do is validate your actions. So, we've always been in meetings and we hear the rumbling around the water cooler about, who made that decision? Why are they purchasing those computers? How did they get a budget? Where did they get the money from? So you hear all of these different things from people. Well, people will always question or challenge decisions and actions they're not in support of or don't understand, but the vision can help the organization refocus and guide team members to understand the actions that were taken. So it's important to have that vision and to be able to use it to validate all the actions that you're taking in your organization. It also helps support both your long and short-term decision-making process. So whether your decisions you're making are going to have a big impact, or whether it's just something that is smaller, that is more tactical, it needs to be part of the vision, or we shouldn't be doing it. So again, it helps those decision-making efforts at your district. And then the term digging out is, I made that phrase up. A lot of times, people in the organization begin to take actions or make decisions that are not aligned with the vision. And it's easy to lose focus. And so there are many times that people are under stress, they're under budget constraints, they are having personal issues, there's organizational issues, or people are just trying to get stuff done, and it's natural to forget about the focus of the organization during those times. So when you get people heading off in a tangent, you need to be able to dig them out of that tangent, and that is getting them refocused and looking at the vision and saying, how does this fit with the vision of the organization? Funding, I just put that in there because a lot of times when you write grants or go for funding at different proposals, they want to know what your vision is, and so you need to have that in your toolkit so that you can be ready to respond to them. And then proactive engagement. You need to be proactive in communicating your organization's to your organization's stakeholders. And so having a vision that you can articulate well gives you that proactive engagement, so when you're out in the community or when you're at a conference or you're meeting colleagues, you have those tools with you to be able to talk about that. So hopefully that helps a little bit and understand why it's so important to have a vision and to be able to articulate that vision to anyone that you meet. So let's talk a little bit about structuring for success. So one of our thought questions was, what does your organization look like? And so what I have put up here is pretty much a typical organizational structure. I've worked in an organization with this structure in the past. Typically, you'll have a superintendent, then kind of the key cabinet people would be, it's always business, HR, finance, and usually you have your assistant sup for curriculum and instruction. But what happens in this type of an organization is that you have, I'm going to attempt to draw here, so hold on. You attempt to have a disconnect between primarily these two people, between the educational technology side of the house and the IT side of the house. And what happens is these two people probably never talk to each other. And it's just probably the same thing with these two people. So it makes it very difficult to get projects done when you have disconnects or opportunities for disconnects or for communication to not be as well as it should be in the organization. So to me, this type of a structure doesn't really work well for trying to integrate technology and do big curriculum and technology projects together. It's a different kind of structure. So let's look at those different kinds of structures. So this is a little quote that I made up. The most important relationship in your organization that will help ensure successful technology integration is that between curriculum and instruction and information technology. Now, I'm not forgetting all those ed tech folks out there, but that is the most important thing, because that IT department can definitely cause roadblocks for you. It definitely can make things not happen. So if those two people are not sitting at the same table, you're not going to have the best opportunity for success. If they're not together, typically people hate their IT departments. They don't let us do what we want in the education side of the house. They don't speak our language, so they speak this language that no one understands. Everything costs way too much money when the IT people get involved, and it takes way too much time. And those are the typical excuses that you hear from IT organizations. And I'm guilty of that as well. I worked in the IT organization of a very, very large school district. And there was definitely a disconnect between myself and curriculum and instruction. So it's very difficult to get projects done, either IT projects or curriculum projects, if those two people are not sitting at the same table. So let's take a little look again at a different kind of an organization. So in this organization, IT is at the cabinet level. And so you have curriculum instruction, business, IT, finance, and HR. And in this picture, I also put ed tech reporting to IT. Now that may upset some of the curriculum folks out there, but I did do a dashed line because now IT and curriculum are at the same table, and they are able to communicate and understand each other much more than if they're not sitting at the same table. And IT at the cabinet level lends itself to actually strengthening the entire organization, because now IT is sitting there with the superintendent and with the other cabinet folks, and they really can't make up excuses for why they're not supporting the organization. So it is that is why I put the IT and curriculum, and it kind of stops the battle between the two organizations. And then when I've seen this actually in practice, the ed tech people have a stronger voice by being connected to IT than they would at the curriculum level. So I think it's good in a large organization to build a structure similar to this. And there's no one right way. I'm just expressing what has worked for me in the past. Let's take a look at a small district. In a small district, you'll notice that the IT and ed tech are combined. So in many organizations, they don't have the resources to have a separate educational technology department. So really, you're looking for that person that can do both IT and ed tech, and they're sitting at the cabinet level with the rest of the organization. So that is an example of a small district and where they can sit at the same table and have be most successful for integrating technology projects. So let's take a little look at tools to support our curriculum focus. So some of the things to think about here is you need to be an informed and educated consumer of educational technology services. You need to make sure that the technology tools, programs, or applications are aligned and that they support your curriculum focus. And then use the sample checklist. So I have a sample checklist for when you're looking at applications. So I'm going to bring that up on the screen. And so here is the checklist, and it's things to consider. So this would be something that if you're looking for an application that you would want to go through as checklist similar to this, and you'll be able to download this one so that you'll have it. So we kind of start off with, does the app support our curriculum focus? So do we know what features or what are the best supports for our focus? So if you don't have a curriculum focus, you can't answer this question. So you really have to step back and find that curriculum focus and then start looking for the applications that support that. Some other things to consider as you go through this are have considered all the costs associated with operating it. So, is there licensing fees? Are there terms and agreements? Are there ongoing costs of the application? And then continuing on, is it web-based or does it have to be installed on our devices? So, more and more today things are web-based and you don't worry about it as much, but there are still applications that I run into that they have to be installed. And so I have to look and see, well, will that still run on a Mac that's not an Intel machine, or what version of the operating system does it have to work on, or what version of Windows does it have to work with? So those are all things you want to consider. Is it considered user-friendly? So then that's going to lead to professional development. How easy is it for the kids or the students to use, and then how much professional development are you going to have to allot for when the application for teachers and for time for training to do that? And then, is it supported? Does the app require IT support? So that's going to be a big part of what you're going to have to answer. Is this something the IT department has to get involved in all the time, or is it something that doesn't require IT support? And there are some other couple questions there. Do we have the bandwidth? Do we have the people? And what does the support look like from the vendor? So we want to know what kind of support structures there are. And then we need to know, does this require board approval? If you're going to write a contract for an application, then you need to know if you're going to need board approval or not. So these are all things to consider, because if you have to go get board approval, for example, that may take you a month before you can get to the next board meeting. So it's just something to consider as you're looking towards purchasing or acquiring applications. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to move on and actually tell you about the curriculum project we did here in Del Mar. So Del Mar is a suburban school district in California, just north of San Diego. We have about 4,400 kids, and we have 8 elementary schools. It is a project that we embarked on to look at curriculum first, and then to look at technologies and how we were successful to integrate those technologies, and then the relationship between curriculum and technology leadership throughout the project. So again, we went back to our strategic plan, and we looked at the 7 different areas of our strategic plan, but actually really focused on the top 3. And so our initial focus, again, was writing, writing, and writing. And of course, the professional learning that went along with that. And we spent over 1.5 years providing professional development for our teachers in how to teach writing effectively. So that were Saturdays, it was getting substitutes, it was bringing in consultants, it was how to get our teachers to be good supporters of instructional writing and the production of writing within our students itself. So we spent 1.5 years just on being good at teaching writing. And it wasn't until that time that we started to look at technologies that could support the writing process. So our technology was beginning with the curriculum instruction and not technology, and we didn't acquire any technology and tried to figure out the purpose for it. We were very clear and intentional about our instructional focus and then determined the need for the technology. And then we just looked at the relationship between myself and the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, and we were able to put together an initiative that was really focused on the writing process. And out of that, what we found, this is a good chart that we borrowed from Joella and Killian, and it shows the interconnectedness between that transformed professional learning and how that transforms actual instruction in the classroom, and then how does that transform the student learning in the classroom. And you'll see later on, this is the same as incorporating technology into classrooms with one-to-one devices. Even without technology, we were able to transform the student learning in that classroom. So move on to the next slide. So let's talk about our focus. So again, everyone is course focused on Common Core state standards, and we were looking at writing in the professional learning model. And we knew that there was a need for high quality professional learning, and it cannot be underestimated the amount of time that it takes, and that it will address the rigor in the form of student thinking, which is reflective of those 21st century skills, which we can all articulate, those things about critical thinking and communication and collaboration and creativity, and being able to kids to make their writing and their thoughts public. So we really had a laser focus on these tools and to support, again, Common Core. And then we looked at the professional learning. And so throughout our program, we allocated 40 hours of professional learning for every teacher that was in our program. And what that looked like was probably 30 minutes of the device we finally selected, and the other 39 and a half hours was really on curriculum integration. So what did it look like? So we met with principals and with teachers and talked about what that professional learning would look like and about how we were going to get them ready for integrating this technology in their classrooms. So a lot of that 40 hours, it could have been hours in the summertime. A lot of it was substitutes that we would get for our teachers so that they could do peer observations and do collaboration with their grade level teams. And then we have opportunities for conferences local to San Diego that our teachers can attend if they wanted to do that. So in our district, the 40 hours equates to $1,000 per teacher. We did not give the money to the school sites. We actually keep it in the central office, and then as they come up with ideas or needs, then they would communicate with us, and then we would support, if it's appropriate, support the program that they'd like to do. So it could be a number, and the 40 hours, it wasn't a magic number. We just took a guess at what we thought it would take, and that's 40 hours every year. So it was a commitment that we made, and then thinking back, you go way back to our strategic plan. Professional learning was in the top 3. So both curriculum instruction, technology, and professional learning, those top 3. So this is where we refocused dollars in our school district, was to support that professional learning. So let me talk a little bit about the goals of our initiative. So when we started, we sat down, myself and the assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, and we sat down with the principal at the school site and with the teachers that were going to be part of our program, and it was by grade level team. And so these are the goals that we had for the initiative. So again, it was to, we have our district academic goals, and we want to support 21st century skills. We wanted to provide access for a meaningful, rigorous, student-centric learning experiences for all kids. And again, when we talk about all kids, we mean all kids, whether they're in gen ed or if they're in another program. We are supporting all of our students. The other goals of our project were to use high-quality educational software, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and develop a plan for district-wide ongoing professional learning. So that's where we talked about the commitment by the teachers to participate in professional learning, because we felt that was the only way we could ensure a successful implementation. And then the last one is provide a managed technical environment that ensures the safe delivery of resources to our students. And that's really important for me and for everyone, that we want to keep our children as safe as we possibly can. So let's go ahead and...
Before we move on,
I
have a question. If you could just tell us a little more about the writing staff development you used at Del Mar.
Okay. So what we did is we elicited the support from Nancy Fetzer, and Nancy Fetzer is has her own company now, and she is considered an expert at teaching the writing process and at working with teachers to become good teachers of the writing process. And so Nancy was a consultant that we brought in. She went into teachers' classrooms, she videotaped teachers in classrooms, she did demonstration lessons, she modeled the lessons, we videotaped her doing lessons. We would bring in grade level teams to watch Nancy teach and model the instructional practice. And then a lot of what we did too was that peer observation as well. As we became more confident and more practiced at teaching the writing process, we would do peer evaluations. And then even, so we're almost 3 years into the program now, and even today, Nancy still comes by. We still, have her on contract for a few days during the year to come by and kind of continue to look at what we're doing and that continuous improvement model. So that's where we focused on that professional learning around writing for our teachers. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to talk about tools to support our curriculum focus. So we looked at a lot of different tools. And so the one to us that was the most valuable was the Google Apps for Education. And actually, when we just started, we only used Google Docs. We didn't use the other parts of Google Apps for Education. And so why did we pick that? Well, one of the things for it was because we had a focus on writing, and they have the tool that allows for collaboration and for sharing, which we didn't see in any other tools. You don't see that in Microsoft Office. You don't see it where 2 or 3 or 4 or 20 kids can collaborate on the same document at the same time. So we felt it supported our process of writing, whether we're we still do storyboards, we still do pre-write, which is not a draft, still do pre-write. And then when you get to the actually to write their documents, to write their first draft, they would get on Google Docs and they would write their drafts, and then they would work on their rewrites. It is just a powerful thing to watch kids who have been struggling with writing and the writing process. And I can say I was one of those kids. I absolutely hated writing because it was the rewriting process that I just wouldn't do. It was too cumbersome for me. It was discouraging. It was hard. And so using a tool, any kind of word processing tool, will support that. But with Google Apps for Education, it also brings in those collaboration and sharing pieces. And those are things that we didn't do right away. We just really got the kids writing, and it made the teachers feel real comfortable in using that application and for the students to use that application. And so we felt it really supported that in the future when we went to collaboration and sharing. It really supported that project-based learning and learning in a performance team, because the kids then can work together as a team. Probably the first thing, and these are not necessarily in any order, but after we really had them writing, for us, it was the teacher to make comments about kids writing. And that was a big aha moment for us, is that the kids really like to get that instant or almost instant feedback about their writing. As well, teachers could, go home, open up all the kids' documents, and make comments on their writing. So when the kids came back the next day, they all had a comment from their teacher. And we really use comments as coaching. So if there's something in a student's writing, we don't tell them what's wrong with the writing. We tell them things like, there's something wrong with the capitalization in this sentence. You need to go back and look and see what's not right. So we kind of just guide them and coach them through comments, and we model that for quite some time. And then we actually now, the students do peer comments. And so they make comments on each other's work, and we had to do a lot of modeling to get them to write professional, articulate, and positive comments when they're talking about their peers. The other thing we liked about Google Apps for Education was that as the teachers became more experienced and more comfortable with the application, the students started doing, publications and presentations. So they used the different, more of the applications within Google Apps to do other things. And again, in the end, we all want to make we want to communicate everything about what they're doing and have them have a way to communicate that and to present that to other people. So that is why we felt Google Apps for Education was our killer app. So if you go back to the thought questions, what's your district's killer app? And for us, it was Google Apps for Education. That was our killer app. So let's look at other tools that we use now that we've kind of expanded that are outside of Google Apps for Education. We use Prezi quite a bit. We really like, it's a presentation tool, kind of like PowerPoint, but it's a different mindset about how you create presentations. It doesn't have to be a linear presentation, where PowerPoint is very linear. Prezi is more open-ended, and you build things more like how you think rather than about trying this linear process. Another one that we found we like, and there's thousands of these applications out there, was a floor planner, which helps us with complex math challenges. It's a pretty good tool for that. Edmodo we use, which is, if you've never used Edmodo before, it's kind of like a Facebook application, but it's contained to that teacher and the students in his or her classroom. And so it can be used for a number of different things. Some people use it to, I think the common term is to flip your classroom, so they'll put assignments on there for kids. They'll have web pages that they want them to go to that night. They'll maybe have math problems that they want them to do that night. And then the kids can respond either privately or publicly back to the group, and the teacher can monitor that. The kids think it's really cool because they think it's kind of like a social network that they can use. So it's a pretty nice tool to use. Glogster is one that is, how can I describe it? It is like an electronic poster board. And so in the old days, if we were going to do something about California missions, we'd get out the scissors and glue and the tape and the glitter and the stars and yarn and all of those things, and you'd build a poster or a diagram to talk about California missions. Well, Glogster does that same thing, except it's all electronic, and you can add in videos and links to websites and other resources that are easy to put together. Quizlet is it's just what it says. It's a quick little tool that you can use to build checks for understanding as you go throughout the day. And then Typing Club we adopted for a couple of reasons. One is that when we first started with using Google Apps for Education, we really focused on grades 4, 5, and 6. And the kids' keyboarding skills just weren't what they needed to be. And I even had parents come to me and, were concerned that their child couldn't type as fast as another child. And so we started to look at a number of different typing programs We liked Typing Club because, one, the kids could log in with their name and password that they use for Google Docs. So that was one of the points. The other one is that it builds a class for the teacher, and the teacher can look in and see their progress throughout the time that they're on Typing Club. And so it becomes kind of a competitive game-like thing for the kids. They want to see how many words per minute they can type. And so we adopted Typing Club. It's free. And we put together a little campaign that we sent home to the parents, because our parents are very involved in the schools, and they want to know what they can do to help. And it really was, have your son or daughter get into Typing Club 5 to 10 minutes a day, and you'll see a huge improvement in their typing skills. So that was something we would send home in the summertime after 3rd grade going into 4th. So we really wanted to get their typing skills up so they're ready for 4th grade. But now we've actually moved that down between 2nd and 3rd grade. And then we all know the reason why is that, with the Smarter Balance testing, those 3rd graders have to be able to type. And so we really wanted to move that down a grade level, and so now we have all of our 3rd graders in Typing Club as well. And it's a good thing for parents to help participate in the program. We actually had to have a conversation with parents about helping their kids at home, because they were logging into Google Docs at home, which is really a cool thing to do so they can see their child's work. But then they started to edit their child's work, and so we had to have a conversation with a couple of moms to say, we really appreciate your support, but we really need to see, how Sophia's writing is, not yours. So it was kind of a funny moment, but it was, something we had to talk to parents about a little bit. Not a lot, but we had to have that conversation. So Typing Club has worked out really well for us. And then we looked at a number of different tools. So our focus was on writing, and then our killer app was Google Docs for Education, and specifically the Docs part of the Google Apps for Education. And then we went out and looked at different technologies that would help support that, and we ended up selecting Chromebooks. And so let me talk about that process a little bit. So we looked at iPads, we looked at netbooks, and we looked at Chromebooks. This is 3 years ago. And so I put together a little tool to help evaluate these different technologies. So we actually took one whole grade level at one of the schools and gave them all Chromebooks. We took another grade level, another school, gave them all netbooks, and then we did iPads at a 3rd school. And then myself and our CNI assistant Soup would visit classrooms almost on a daily basis and really look at this evaluation tool that I created. And it kind of, these are just some of the 4 bullet points, but it was about a 2-page document. It's more of a kind of an observational checklist and looking at the use of it and how the ease of use and just the different technology. And so we ended up selecting Chromebooks as a result of that. We really felt it was the best tool for us. One of the things that we philosophically believe in is that kids need a keyboard to type. So we really wanted them to write, and we felt they needed a keyboard to do that. It's just not the same experience as, tapping on glass, which, I have an iPad at home. I do my email on it. But if you really want, kids to really write and get to be very proficient at it, we felt they needed a keyboard. And we also believed that what we wanted was on the web. So Chromebooks, it's just a web appliance, and all it does is get you to the internet. And so it's not an appliance that you don't install Microsoft Office on it, you don't install applications on it. It really just gets you out onto the web and gets you connected. So it worked perfect with our Google Apps that we're doing. The cost for us was something we really need to look at. The Chromebooks that we use are $247, and that's with the management fee, which is a one-time fee. We felt they're very easy to use. I don't think we taught the kids how to do anything on them. They just open them up and they turn on. They start up in 8 seconds. So that was one of the things about netbooks that we didn't like, was that if you actually shut it all the way down and tried to start it up, you lost, 5-8 minutes of class time waiting for it to boot up again. And if you add that up over the year, that's a lot of instructional time wasted. Plus, it's frustrating for kids to sit there for 5 to 7 minutes waiting for something to start up. What we liked about it from the IT part of it was it requires no IT support. So we put out originally 2,000 of these, and I was the only person supporting them. So it was very little support at all, if any, that we had to do. And then, of course, the functionality with Google Apps, which I've talked about before. So we really felt that that was the right tool for us. I think we were the first ones in Southern California, at least down here in San Diego County, to use them. All my friends thought I was crazy, but it's really turned out to be a very, very successful device to use that supported our curriculum focus here in Del Mar. And then we're going to talk about wireless infrastructure. Yep, go ahead.
Mike, I just wanted to remind the participants that your hardware or device checklist is available on the link.
Okay, great. So I was just going to segue to that, so I'm going to actually bring up that hardware checklist, and I think it's here. And let's see, we're on the right page. I think we got to go over one. There we go. So here's a checklist that we created for when you're thinking about different types of devices or hardware that you'd want to do. So one of them is, do all of our current devices support the application? So you picked an application. Can we run it on our current devices, or are we going to have to go out and look for something different? One key thing is, are devices considered durable? So you really want to think about, are the kids going to carry these around in backpacks? Are they taking them home? Do they stay at the school? You know, how are they going to break? Does the screens crack on when they twist them a certain way? And then how many are out of service? So to answer those questions here in Del Mar, we do not let the kids take them home. We're very fortunate to live in a community where 98+% of the kids have more than one computer at home connected to the internet. In fact, I'm still trying to find someone who doesn't have a device at home so I can solve that problem. So we're very, very fortunate. I know that's not the norm. So don't send in questions about other school districts, because I know a lot of you have a high free and reduced lunch rate, and you may or may not have those resources at home. But it's something to consider. So we actually picked the Samsung Series 3 Chromebooks. If these kids were to carry them around in backpacks all day and to take them home, I might consider a more rugged device. But these work perfect for us. So it's been meeting our needs quite well. So number 3 on here, considering all the costs associated with maintaining the devices, licensing fees. So with Chromebooks, in order to get them into the management console, there's a $30 one-time fee that you have to pay. And the management console allows you to manage all of the Chromebooks in your environment from a single screen. So I can manage all 2,400 devices that we have from my desk, and I can add apps or add extensions or add functionality. Or for like Smarter Balance testing, we push the browser out to everyone already, and we have it set for kiosk mode, so they don't even have to log in. So when we're ready for the test, they'll just select that application browser, and they're off and running. So we don't have to run out and install something on every device. You can push those things down to every machine. You can make every Chromebook open up to the same website every day. Or you can group them and say, I want all the 6th graders to open up this page today. So we don't really get down to that level of granularity, but we do have a start page that we send all of our kids to. So it's really something that's well worth the $30, and something you need to consider whatever device you get. What is all the costs in maintaining those devices, and what do those agreements look like? So then moving on to the life cycle, something to talk about. How long do we think they're going to last? And for a laptop device to go much farther than 4 years is really kind of pushing it. So we're saying ours is a 4-year refresh. Are they considered student-friendly? Do the kids like them? Are our current devices mobile? So is mobility a consideration for the future? And the answer is yes. You're going to have to deal with mobility. It's just the way of the world. Are we ready to support a wireless classroom, professional development, and then again, how are the devices supported? Is the vendor providing support? How long is the warranty for? Are we buying extended warranties, et cetera, et cetera? And then once again, do you need to have board approval to purchase these devices? So that's just some things to consider when you're looking at different devices. When I say hardware, we're talking about like end user devices. So that is.
Mike, before we move on, we have a question.
Okay.
Do you allow staff to have administrative rights to their district laptops or their desktops?
They are, so our staff, we were a Mac district, so all of our teachers have a MacBook, and they are assigned on that as an administrator. So they have an administrator account, so they can add software, they can take software off, they can pretty much do anything they want to on the device. And so I don't want to get too far off track, but what we did with that is we leased all of our teacher laptops, so they all have the exact same laptop. We have one image to support. So from an IT standpoint, that is huge. So whenever we have to re-image a machine, we have one image, we run out there, we re-image it, and they're back online and going in. Plus, we can remote into any machine and kind of solve some problems from there, too. So did that answer the question, Grace, you think? Okay. So let's kind of talk about one more little aspect of this whole Chromebook rollout thing. So there are some other tools that we use that we discovered throughout the implementation that would help us support all of these Chromebooks. And these are actually tools that would help support. If you're using Google Docs for Education, these are great tools. So the first one that I have listed there, I think you pronounce it Umra, and it's by a company called Tools Forever. And what it is a provisioning tool. I'll tell you, it is not for the faint of heart. You would need somebody that knows how to program, or at least be able to write SQL, or if you know how to use PowerShell. That's the kind of understanding you'd have to have in order to use this tool. So it's really one of your IT people. But what we do is provisioning tools. So here's an example. A student comes into our school district, and their first point of entry is into our student information system. So once they enter our student information system, this UMRA tool kicks off, and it creates their Active Directory account, it creates their Google Docs account, it creates their Hapara relationship, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and it automatically sets them up into the printing group so that it's completely end-to-end. Everything that kid needs is all set up for them. So it generates their name and password and all those things, and then we have a report that the teachers can run. So after the kids, the next day, the teacher can run a report and give the kid a printout of here's your username and password, and here's where you go to get on everything. And so then when the student leaves our district, it just disables their account. So IT doesn't touch it anymore. So we don't get involved in provisioning Google Docs accounts anymore, or how do I set them up on printers, or how do I get them into Active Directory and all, or whatever directory service you use. So that's an example of how we use that UMRA product. And then we applied it to our staff as well. So the first point of contact for a employee is HR. So when they enter them into our HR system, it automatically generates, again, their Active Directory account. It gives them a name and a password. It puts them in Microsoft Exchange, which we use for the adults. And then it actually builds their Google Docs account too, because all of our teachers have Google Docs accounts. So again, it's a provisioning tool that takes all of that, manpower intensive labor out of your hands and automates everything for you. So it's a really great tool to have. Hapara is kind of two parts to Hapara. There's Teacher Desktop, and then there's Remote Access. So Teacher Desktop from one screen shows all of the students associated with that teacher who are logged into Google Docs. And it's not actually where they're logged. They don't even actually have to be logged in. It just shows all the students associated with that teacher. Excuse me. And it shows them all of their documents if they want to see them. So before, teachers were going into the kids were sharing, and they were sharing them to all their documents to their teacher, and it took no time at all before the teachers had thousands of documents in their drive. And so how do you sift through all that to, find the assignment that you want to make comments on? So this teacher dashboard allows you to see all the documents that the kid has ever done, and in an organized way, and it allows the teacher to open up those documents whether or not they were shared with the teacher. So that whole sharing with your teacher all goes away. You don't have to worry about that. And then the other part of it with remote access, which is a different fee, of course, remote access allows them to actually see what's on all the tabs that are on a student's Chromebook that are open, so they can actually see what the kids are doing. It kind of just takes a snapshot of the screen, so it's not like live, but it refreshes quite often. So, and then the teacher can actually close tabs or send a note to the kids and cue them that they need to get back on task. And then the other part of remote access is it allows them to push a document pre-named out to the students so that they don't have to worry about what the kids call the document. And there's a little code you put at the top to automatically enter in their first name and last name and then put in the name of the document. And that's huge because that'll be something that they'll push out, overnight. And the first thing when the kids come in, there's this document, they can get started on it and work on it right away. And then the last one, Backupify, which is an interesting name, but it's Google does not back up what's inside everyone's drive. They back up the accounts. So Backupify actually backs up what's inside Drive for every student, and the way it's set up, we back up 3 times a day, and then you can actually go backwards in history to any moment in time and restore your drive back to what it looked like at that time. So, something happened. It happens not that often, but a couple times it's happened this year that I had to go back and restore back to a moment in time and get all of the students' documents back, and it's huge. If we are putting so much emphasis on using Google Apps for Education, we need to make sure that we don't lose those documents for those kids. Because over the 3 years, they build a portfolio that they're able to share and actually take with them to middle school or high school when they leave us. So Backupify, reasonably priced. I think for our entire district, it cost me about $1,000 a year to back up all of the accounts. Like I said, 3 times a day. So that's really a really neat tool to have. And actually, the students could restore it themselves if they knew how, but we just don't tell them how to do it. Maybe one day they'll just find it themselves, but it's simple enough that we can actually send an email to a teacher and they can do it quite easily themselves as well.
Mike, before we move on, we have a question.
Okay.
What was the learning curve for your teachers for using Hapara?
That's a good question. I would say we didn't, we had them actually at one of our, all district, staff development days in an auditorium, and we just kind of showed it to them. Maybe we spent 15 minutes on it, and they just kind of just got it right away. And then what happened is we have a tech teacher at every school site, and so we gave them a little bit more training. So this one, it's kind of that when they're ready for this, we would walk around and say, hey, have you ever tried, sending a document to them, remotely? And they'd go, how do I do that? And then we'd show them, and it's such an easy tool to learn. It's really very little time at all required to learn how to do that. They did a really good job on the user interface, and it's really quite simple, actually. Okay, so just moving forward here a little bit. So this was our philosophy, and we still really hold to this, that one-to-one is not about devices to kids. It's about the interactions a teacher has with each student and students have with each other. And we feel there's nothing that makes a more profound impact than increasing the time a student has with their teacher. And I think we all know that. So how do you increase time with a teacher? And so here's, it's a new way of thinking, is that here's a way where a teacher and student can connect through comments and collaboration, as well as just being, face-to-face directly. So it actually finding is increasing the time that they have to interact with their students than they did before. So we really believe that. And so here we don't talk about technology projects at all, we talk about curriculum projects. And even if, when everybody walks around, are you doing one-to-one? Are you doing one-to-one? And we say, well, we're doing a curriculum project and we're providing tools for all the kids. And so that's really how we talk, and it's become part of our, just kind of our lexicon within our school district. And even our board members are we're all on board about how we talk about, it's not about devices, it's not about buying stuff, it's really about how are you supporting the instructional practice in your school district. So going to kind of move off of that just a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit about, I said we talk a little bit about infrastructure and wireless. So, and we'll talk about, I have another checklist for infrastructure as well. So let's talk about wireless. So I don't know what the devices are going to be in the future, but I can guarantee you they're going to be mobile and they're going to be wireless. And I really think we all see that. It's already here. It's how we work. It's how the kids are connected. And so we really need to think about, so what does our wireless readiness look like? I have been at school districts where they've bought a device for every child. They went to turn them on, and it was a failure to start because their wireless couldn't handle that number of devices connecting to a wireless device at one place. They didn't have an enterprise strategy for wireless. They really were working off of a old type of wireless technology that was fine 10 years ago, but it's definitely not okay now. So we're going to talk a little bit about, when I talk about what it means to have coverage, and then what it means to have a saturated wireless environment. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you manage all those devices, because pretty soon you end up with hundreds of these wireless access points out there, and then how do you manage that? And then we'll talk about bandwidth a little bit too. Well, bandwidth is easy. Just get more and more and more. So it's just you're gonna continue to consume bandwidth, and pretty much everyone I know right now is moving toward gig connections to their district, if not more than one connection to their district. And so it's really getting those choke points opened up again. So I'm going to show a couple slides here about what I mean by some of the wireless. One of the things that's interesting too is that all of the Chromebooks, if you think about iPads, if you think about Nexus tablets, if you think about some of the newer Apple MacBook Pros or the Airs, if you look at the new Lenovo or Dell laptops, none of them come with RJ45 connectors on them anymore. So there's no thing not there to plug an Ethernet cable into. So the whole industry is moving that way to this. We're in a wireless environment. So you have to make sure the thing is going to work, or pretty much you're I use an old cliche, but you're dead in the water if your wireless goes down. So you really want to make sure you do it right. So this is an example of possibly how we used to build wireless networks, and we used to do what we called coverage. And these represent classrooms, and if I just wanted to have 5, 10 devices on, I could wander those 3 hallways, and I could stay connected, and used to be able to do that. Well, that's not the case anymore, because when you put 30 devices in a room, and then you have how many of the kids have cell phones, and they're grabbing onto the wireless network as well, or adults walk into the room. So pretty soon you have, a pretty saturated environment with wireless devices, and just having coverage won't support those devices anymore. So you really not, this picture right here is definitely not one that would work for supporting a student with every student having a device. So we used to go around and make, in IT, and make these, they call them heat maps, and you draw circles, and you try to see how far the signal goes, and you try to make sure you're overlapping, and then you're worried about channels and all kinds of crazy things. Well, what we really decided when it moved to is, this is what the world is moving to now. You just put a wireless access point in every classroom. And you want to put them in the common areas as well. Some people are considering even outdoors. So it bleeds outside. So you could, some of our kids sit outside and maybe can get on wireless quite easily, but you really want to look at what we call a saturated wireless network. Stop making heat maps. It doesn't matter anymore. And what you want to do is make sure that you're using an enterprise type wireless. And there's, I don't want to promote one manufacturer over another, but there are 2 or 3 big players in the wireless market. it's expensive. Each one of those access points probably costs around $500. And so when you start looking at a bigger school or a bigger school district, it's a substantial investment to make. But again, you have to be able to support huge numbers of wireless things connecting on your network. The other part of it we talked a little bit about was how does this stuff really work? And so I kind of tried to draw a real simple picture here of how it really works. So those wireless access points are connecting to some kind of a switch that's in the building. So that switch is a physical device. It's usually in a phone closet someplace. And then that switch is connected somewhere to wherever the main point is in your district, back to wireless controllers. So this is the way it's built to be a manageable and an enterprise model for managing your wireless environment. So, and actually, so you think of, we have many switches out there, they're supporting our wireless. Those are all eventually come back to our wireless controller, and actually we have 2 wireless controllers, so that one is set up for failover and for load balancing. So we feel it's really important to keep our wireless network up, and so you have to add technologies behind the scenes to support all this wireless. And I will just tell you, it's all expensive. So, but it's really just plan it and do it right, and you can kind of try to want to future-proof as best you can. We know that technology changes really fast, but you can build a wireless infrastructure that will be around for a while. So, and one that is easily to upgrade. The other thing to think about, if you're one of the folks that's talking about involved in purchasing wireless or any of this kind of back-end device, the companies will work with you. If they find out and you write an RFP for wireless, they will come down on their pricing. So even the most expensive wireless out there, they'll lower their prices at least 40% in order to get your business. So they want that footprint in your school. And so, be savvy about purchasing, be savvy about how you work with the vendors and how you write RFPs. So let's take a quick look at the checklist for infrastructure. I think I got to move this one. There we go. So first of all, you shouldn't be doing infrastructure projects unless they're just infrastructure projects. There really aren't anything more than that. So you really want to think about, is it going to support our applications and our devices? So when you're looking at infrastructure, wireless access points, what kind of radios are in the devices, and what do we need to support that moving forward? Is it cost effective? Infrastructure is real expensive, so you want to think about how you spend your money on infrastructure, and kind of the rule of thumb is you get what you pay for in that world. Do we have a life cycle plan in place? So I actually have our switches on an 8-year rotation, so that every 8 years we need to replace them. So actually spread that out. So each year I do it, since you only have 8 schools, I can do one every year and then keep up. And where did I get the 8 years from? We actually happen to be a Cisco shop, and that's about the life cycle of Cisco appliances. I know they're guaranteed for life, but they're guaranteed for the life that the vendor says, not your life. So that's how we get that. And is the infrastructure standardized? So it's really important for me to actually have a homogeneous environment. I don't want to mix apples and oranges and lemons and tangerines, and then when something doesn't work, you've got to call 4 different vendors, and they all point at each other. So this is really, more like your real hardcore IT people. It's like, are you a Microsoft shop? Are you a Cisco shop? Are you an Aruba shop? You need to pick one and stick with it, and have that homogeneous environment so that you can. Otherwise, your maintenance costs go up so high trying to maintain all those different things. Installation considered. One of the things people don't think about a lot is cooling for all those devices sitting in those racks, and power consumption behind it. So you really need to think about that. Bandwidth, how much bandwidth we have coming in. Do we get support from our vendor? And then, of course, maintaining our infrastructure. Those are our costs, and what do you have smart net agreements on? What do you not? And then, of course, most of these things have to be board approved because they're bigger contracts in order to purchase infrastructure components. And I just showed you a small part of the infrastructure in the slides. This is just really a really, simple of just how it works. So, and the purpose of having you learn a little bit about infrastructure, if you're not an IT person, is you need to know how to have that conversation with your IT folks. So it gives you a little bit of information to have a more meaningful conversation with your IT staff. So let's go ahead and move on. We're almost done. I wanted to talk a little bit about why technology projects fail, and I actually have written a book on this. And these are just some of the things I pulled out of the book, and it's because they failed to, one, build the right team, and with that I mean is, who are the right people to work with this together, and are the right people sitting at the right place in the organization in order to be successful? Do they have a strategic plan for technology that is in alignment with the district's strategic plan and the district's curriculum focus? And are those initiatives working together and supporting each other? And then they failed to design a sustainability into the support organization. So a lot of times folks will go out and buy things and they can't support it once they get it. And then the last thing, of course, is measure what they do. Folks tend to not measure what they do, and so they really don't know. There are some subjective ideas of whether they were successful or not, but if you're not measuring what's going on, then you really don't know whether you have reached the conclusion or if you are still struggling. So, and that's it. So that's my email address. It's just mcasey@dmusd.org.